Next, I'd like to call Ashil Samuel Quran to speak.
Thank you, Selim. First, I have to say that this is a true delight to be talking with such a distinguished panel, and it is so happy for me to be able to talk to Indian audience. Let me start by telling you a story. The first time I wrote this book, the first year I wrote the book, in 2019, I was in Edinburgh and giving a speech, and among the audience there were Indian members. And when I talked about the global patterns of rising right-wing populism or totalitarianism, the members of the Indian community were smiling a broken smile, so to speak. My book does not include Indian example. But then after the panel, they came to talk to me, and I learned that what I have been telling in How to Lose a Country was applying to India very much, to put it lightly. Unfortunately, I'm not very confident about the Indian politics. I'm not very self-confident about that. It is a very complex country, and I don't know enough about this country to write about it. But it is not coincidence that what I have written in the book applies to India, because this is a global phenomenon. Both right-wing populism, totalitarianism, and crony capitalism as a consequence of this political crisis. Uh, this is a global matter, but until very recently, especially until Brexit and Trump becoming the president, this phenomenon, right-wing populism, has been seen as a crisis of the periphery countries, or so-called developing countries, or so-called countries where democracy is not strong enough. So what I was trying to tell to the entire world in 2019 and 2020, that it's not, we have not been through this because Turkey is a crazy country or India is a underdeveloped country. We are going through this because we are witnessing hopefully the last crisis of capitalism. As a consequence, we're seeing this immense crisis in representative democracy. This is how I see the situation. The fundamental contract of capitalism has torn apart the fundamental contract of democracy. All this time, coming from Turkey, I have been subjected to the questions such as, can democracy live in a Muslim country? Can democracy live in underdeveloped countries? But finally, I think we are at a point where we are supposed to ask the question, can democracy live in capitalism? Because the current state of capitalism, especially this crisis, showed us that if you take away the integral part of democracy, which is social justice, take it out, democracy becomes a theatrics of itself. That is why we do not have any political or emotional connection individually to our democracies, not enough connection to protect it from this totalitarian rise. So, uh, one of the questions I've been asked about Turkey or in other countries where right-wing populism are on the rise is, why do these people, why do these big masses still support these crazy strong men such as Trump or Bolsonaro or Modi or Erdogan? And what I'm trying to tell them is that first of all, they're not popular. Their support is not that big, not as much as they want to show. The second most important thing is, since from the day one of their political power, since after right away they come to political power, what they do is try to create a financial web. This is political money that they are distributing, not only to the big capital, as Mr. Finance Minister has already said, but this is a bigger system, a more complex system, where the layman, where the you know the man who is in the last floor of the society, on the ground floor of the society, is also fed by this political money. So this web, this financial web, actually is the security web of these leaders. That is why people are supporting these leaders. Right now in Turkey, there is a very serious economic crisis. My country started looking like Venezuela in the last week. Turkish currency has depreciated by 15% in on a single day, thanks to the crazy decision making, which is only controlled by Mr. Erdogan. But whenever you go to the lines, the queues in front of the cheap supermarkets where people want to buy bread for 1 lira less. When you ask those people in the queue, they're still supporting Mr. Erdogan because they know that if Erdogan is gone, this entire web of financial political money will be cracked as well. So they are fighting for this leader as if they're fighting for their lives, because actually they are fighting for their lives when they are supporting Erdogan, especially during the elections. But one thing there is one aspect of the situation which is interesting, and Finance Minister just touched upon it earlier. Um, in the early days of such leaders, the capital, especially the big capital, try to approach this political power as a natural reflex of the capital, and they think that they can survive in this totalitarian system if they, have a good relationship with the leader. This happened in Turkey as well, which actually legitimized this government and Mr. Erdogan in the eyes of the upper middle class and upper class. However, after some time, as happened in India, I just learned this, even the mega rich now is leaving the country because they know that this is not sustainable. When there is no minimum democracy, the capital cannot operate in a secure environment, so to speak. So it is a very late reaction coming from the big capital in Turkey, but they are suddenly reacting to Mr. Erdogan as well, especially during the last year. This has become an issue. Um, Moral fray was an interesting concept, finance minister told about. Uh, since a while, I haven't been calling this right-wing populism, but I'm calling it fascism. And when I give speeches in European countries, when I say fascism, there is a certain reaction, which is not very nice to witness. They, especially the Europeans, they want to see fascism as a historical concept, whereas today we are seeing that fascism is also a political concept, a political tool, so to speak, used by these leaders. So whenever their support is in decrease, they start to use fascist, tools, political tools, and this is what we see happening in Turkey as well. So from now on, I'm going to be using fascism or fascist inclinations instead of right-wing populism, because I came to notice that right-wing populism or authoritarian inclinations and so on doesn't cut it really. I started thinking that it's a calming term, and it doesn't really reflect the moral fray that we are going through. It is not only about political finance. It's not only about crisis of democracy. It's not only about institutions coming into pieces, but also this system, this political tool of fascism, does something to the individual as well. And we are seeing a moral distortion, so to speak, where the good and the bad, ugly and the beautiful, replace each other, which creates an environment social environment, a moral environment that is impossible to overcome by any kind of politics. So I think there's a way out of this, but I think we're going to speak about that after Manut give his beautiful representation. Thank you very much.
Um, Next, thank you so much for your amazing speech.